Hannah Weber never imagined her life would turn out this way. At 32, she was working as an elementary school teacher in Wiesbaden, living in a small two-room apartment and struggling to pay her bills every month. Rents in the Hessian state capital had skyrocketed in recent years, and her salary as a probationary civil servant was barely enough to make ends meet. Her parents, both factory workers from Rüsselsheim, had helped her financially with her education as best they could. But Hannah was still carrying the burden of 15,000 euros in student debt, which was slowly but surely weighing her down. On a rainy November evening, Hannah sat exhausted on her worn-out sofa, scrolling through social media. The corrections of 28 German essays, written by her third graders, lay untouched on the coffee table. She had no energy left. The day had been particularly exhausting. A parent-teacher conference had escalated because a mother had accused her of not encouraging her child enough. Her principal had then taken her aside and admonished her to be more diplomatic with the parents. Hannah felt burned out, unseen, and completely alone. In this moment of despair, she came across a video that her algorithm suggested to her. It showed a charismatic middle-aged man speaking to a large congregation. His voice was warm and inviting. His words seemed to speak directly to Hannah's soul. He spoke about hope in difficult times, about God's plan for each individual, about the power of community. The man was Pastor Markus Steinbach, leader of the New Life Free Church in Mainz. Hannah had not grown up religious. Her family had celebrated Christmas and Easter, but church had never been an important part of her life. Yet something about Pastor Steinbach's words touched her deeply. He spoke of people who felt lost, who were searching for meaning, who thought no one would understand them. It was as if he was speaking directly to her. At the end of the sermon, he invited everyone to visit the church. Every Sunday at 10 o'clock, he said, and his eyes seemed to look directly into the camera. We are a family, and every family has room for a new member. The following Sunday, Hannah found herself nervously standing in front of the modern church center in Mainz. The building was surprisingly contemporary, with large glass windows and an inviting foyer. Inside, she was immediately greeted by friendly people who introduced themselves and welcomed her. A woman named Petra, about Hannah's age, gave her a particularly warm welcome. "You're new here, aren't you? Come, I'll show you around. You'll see it's like coming home here." The service was unlike anything Hannah had expected. Instead of traditional hymns, there was a band with drums, electric guitars, and professional singers. The people around her sang with their hands raised, some crying with emotion. Pastor Steinbach took the stage in jeans and an elegant shirt, not traditional clerical garb. His sermon was rousing, peppered with personal stories and humorous anecdotes. He spoke about loneliness in the modern world, about the longing for genuine connection. Hannah felt tears welling up in her eyes. It was as if someone finally understood what was going on inside her. After the service, there was coffee and cake in the parish hall. Petra introduced Hannah to several people, all of whom were incredibly friendly and interested. They asked about her life, her job, her hobbies. No one pushed anything on her or seemed intrusive. It just felt good to be seen and appreciated. Then Pastor Steinbach came over to her personally. His presence was impressive, even though he wasn't particularly tall. He radiated an authority and warmth that Hannah felt immediately. "Hannah, right? Petra told me about you. Welcome to our community." He shook her hand and held it a moment longer than usual, his gaze direct and intense. "I hope you enjoyed the sermon. Sometimes God leads people to us just when they need it most." Hannah nodded, unsure of what to say. Her voice was hoarse as she replied. "It was really moving. I haven't felt so understood in a long time." Pastor Steinbach smiled warmly. "I hear that a lot. You know, the modern world can be brutal, especially for people with a good heart like you." Teacher, Petra said. One of the most important vocations there is. You shape young souls. That is sacred work. The way he said it made Hannah feel important and valuable. No one at her school talked about her profession that way. There, she was just another overworked and underpaid teacher. But Pastor Steinbach saw something greater in her. In the weeks that followed, the New Life Church became the center of Hannah's life. She not only went to church on Sundays, but also to Bible study groups on Wednesday evenings, prayer meetings on Friday mornings, and social events on Saturday evenings. The church members quickly became her closest friends. She felt accepted, understood, and part of something bigger. Pastor Steinbach seemed to take a special interest in her. He regularly asked her how she was doing and offered to pray for her when she had problems. He remembered small details from their conversations, which made Hannah feel truly important. After about 2 months, he asked her to stay briefly after a church service. He wanted to talk to her about something personal. In his office, a spacious room with bookshelves and comfortable leather armchairs, he offered her a seat. "Hannah," he said seriously, "I have thought and prayed about you a lot. I believe God has led you to our church for a reason." Hannah felt her heart beat faster. "What do you mean?" Pastor Steinbach leaned back in his chair, his fingers forming a pyramid. "You have a special light within you, a purity and sincerity that has become rare in this world. I have led this congregation for 15 years, and I have learned to read people. In you, I see someone who has not yet been corrupted by the corruption of this world, someone who still believes in goodness." The words touched Hannah deeply. No one had ever spoken to her that way before. She felt both ashamed and honored. "I would like to ask you if you would be willing to take on more responsibility in our congregation," Pastor Steinbach continued. "We need people like you in leadership positions, people who can be trusted. I'm thinking of leading our children's ministry group. With your experience as a teacher, you would be perfect for it." Hannah was overwhelmed. She stammered an agreement, grateful for the trust placed in her. Pastor Steinbach stood up and came around the desk. He placed his hands on her shoulders, a feeling that was both comforting and slightly uncomfortable. "I knew I could count on you. You will do great things for God's kingdom, Hannah. I can feel it." Hannah enjoyed working with the children. She developed creative lessons, organized activities, and built genuine relationships with the families. Pastor Steinbach regularly praised her work, sometimes even publicly during church services. Hannah blossomed under the recognition. For the first time in years, she felt competent and valued. After about 6 months in the congregation, Pastor Steinbach began to ask more personal questions. He inquired about her family, her past relationships, her fears, and her dreams. Hannah, who had been feeling lonely, opened up to him. She told him about her financial worries, her difficult relationship with her mother, her fear of being alone. Pastor Steinbach listened with an intensity that Hannah found addictive. Finally, someone had time for her, someone who was genuinely interested in her life. One evening, after a particularly emotional conversation about Hannah's loneliness, Pastor Steinbach said something that changed everything. "Hannah, I have to confess something to you. Over the last few months, I've fallen in love with you." Hannah was speechless. Pastor Steinbach was 48 years old, attractive, charismatic, and a respected figure in the community. His first marriage had ended in divorce 5 years ago, as Hannah knew. He lived alone in a large house on the outskirts of Mainz. "I know this comes as a surprise," he continued, "and I understand if you need time to think about it, but I don't believe in coincidences. I believe God led you to me. Not just for the congregation, but also for me personally." Hannah's feelings were complicated. She felt flattered, but also taken aback. Pastor Steinbach was her mentor, her spiritual authority. Could this turn into a romantic relationship? On the other hand, she had felt attracted to him in recent months, even if she didn't want to admit it. His attention, his interest in her life, the way he looked at her, all of that had awakened something in her. "I don't know what to say," Hannah whispered. "I didn't expect you to feel that way. I mean, for you to feel that way." Pastor Steinbach smiled gently. "Just call me Marcus when we're alone. I don't want to be your pastor right now. I just want to be a man who opens his heart to a special woman." In the weeks that followed, a romantic relationship developed between Hannah and Marcus. They kept it secret at first, meeting outside the church in restaurants in other cities or at his home. Marcus was attentive, generous, and passionate. He showered Hannah with compliments, small gifts, and romantic gestures. After years of loneliness, Hannah felt like she was in a dream. Marcus told Hannah about his difficult first marriage, about a woman who had not understood him, who had not appreciated his service to God. He described himself as lonely and misunderstood, despite his successful church. Hannah felt honored that he opened up to her like this. She saw herself as the woman who could finally make him happy. After 3 months of a secret relationship, Marcus suggested making their relationship public. "The church will understand," he assured her. "You are loved and respected. They will see that we are meant for each other." The church's reaction was mixed. Many members, especially Petra and other close friends, congratulated them warmly. But Hannah also noticed disapproving looks, whispered conversations that fell silent when she entered a room. Some older members of the congregation did not seem happy about the relationship. Marcus dismissed their concerns. "Jealousy and resentment," he said. "People have a hard time when others are happy. Don't let it affect you." 6 months after they began their relationship, Marcus proposed to Hannah. It was during a church service in front of 150 people. He called Hannah to the front, got down on one knee, and said that God had revealed to him that she should be his wife. The ring was impressive, a diamond that Hannah could never have afforded. The congregation applauded, some crying with emotion. Hannah, overwhelmed by the public attention and the pressure of the situation, said yes. The wedding was set for 2 months later. Marcus took over all the planning, as Hannah was overwhelmed with her work at school and preparations for the new school year. He hired a wedding planner, booked a beautiful location on the Rhine, organized catering and decorations. All Hannah had to do was choose her dress and show up. Hannah's parents had been at the engagement party, but they seemed reserved. Her mother pulled Hannah aside. "Are you sure he's the right man for you?" she asked quietly. "This is all happening so fast, and he's so much older than you." Hannah, who had a complicated relationship with her mother, immediately felt defensive. "He's the best thing that ever happened to me. He understands me. He appreciates me. Why can't you just be happy for me?" Her mother sighed. "I just want you to be happy. But be careful. Men in positions of power aren't always what they seem." Hannah ignored the warning. Her mother had never understood what she needed. Marcus, on the other hand, did. He was her savior, her partner, her future. 2 weeks before the wedding, Marcus asked Hannah to sign various documents: prenuptial agreement, asset declarations, agreements regarding the congregation. It was a lot of paperwork, all in complicated legal language. Hannah, exhausted from the wedding preparations and her busy school life, barely skimmed the documents. Marcus assured her that it was all routine, standard documents to protect the church and their future together. "These are just formalities," he explained patiently. "As the pastor of a large church, I have to make sure that everything is legally secure. It protects both of us. Trust me, darling. I would never let you sign anything that would harm you." Hannah signed. She trusted him completely. Why shouldn't she? He was a man of God, respected by hundreds of people. He loved her and wanted to marry her. What could possibly go wrong? The wedding was like something out of a fairy tale. 200 guests, beautiful decorations, professional photographers and videographers. The ceremony was performed by a pastor friend, as Marcus himself could not be his own best man. Hannah wore a dress worth €3,000, paid for by Marcus. She felt like a princess. In his wedding vows, Marcus spoke of God's plan, of destiny, of the special woman God had sent him to complete his life. "Hannah, you are my gift from heaven," he said in front of all the guests. "I promise to honor, protect, and guide you as Christ guides the church. Our marriage will be a testimony to God's love." As Hannah lay in Marcus's arms on the dance floor, surrounded by happy faces and warm light, she thought her life had finally taken a turn for the better. The lonely, struggling teacher was gone. In her place stood Hannah Steinbach, wife of a respected pastor, member of a loving community, a woman with a future and security. What Hannah didn't know was that the documents she had signed so thoughtlessly would control her life in ways she could never have imagined. The romantic facade that Marcus had so perfectly constructed was beginning to crack, and the woman she would become in the years to come, a broken, manipulated, and isolated version of her former self, already existed in her new husband's plans. They spent their honeymoon in the Maldives, a week in a luxury resort, paid for by the congregation as a wedding gift. It was the first trip abroad in Hannah's life. Marcus was attentive and loving, organizing romantic dinners on the beach and trips to remote islands. Hannah felt blessed, but already on the return trip to Germany, something began to change. Marcus became quiet and pensive. When Hannah asked what was wrong, he said tersely that he was worried about the community. He had been away for so long. Who knows what could have gone wrong in his absence? Hannah tried to reassure him, but Marcus became increasingly tense. At Frankfurt Airport, he constantly checked his cell phone, frowning at the messages he received. When they finally arrived at his large house in Mainz, the house that was now also Hannah's home, Marcus announced that he had to go to the church immediately. There was a crisis that required his attention. "But we just got back," Hannah protested. "Can't we at least be together tonight?" Marcus' expression hardened. "Hannah, you have to understand that my work for God isn't just a job. It's a calling. People rely on me. I can't let them down just because it suits you." The harshness in his voice shocked Hannah. He had never spoken to her like that before. She quickly apologized, assuring him that she understood. Marcus's face immediately softened again. He kissed her forehead. "I knew you would understand. You're a pastor's wife now. That means making sacrifices." After he left, Hannah unpacked her suitcases alone in the large, quiet house. She suddenly felt very small and insecure, but she shook off the feeling. It was just her adjusting to married life. Everything would settle down. What Hannah didn't know at that moment was that this was only the beginning. The mask that Marcus had worn so carefully during the courtship would slowly slip away, and the true face of the man she had married would gradually become visible. A face she would learn to fear in the years to come. The first weeks of marriage were superficially normal. Hannah moved into Marcus's house completely and tried to get used to her new life. The house was impressively large, much too large for two people. 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a huge living room, and a study that Marcus referred to as his private sanctuary. Hannah was only allowed to enter it when he expressly invited her to do so. Marcus's working hours were extreme. He left the house early in the morning and often didn't return until late in the evening. When Hannah asked where he had been, he replied curtly, "Community work, pastoral care, God's work can't wait." His answers left no room for further questions. Hannah continued to work as a teacher, but Marcus began to make comments about her job. "Maybe you should work less," he said one evening at dinner. "A pastor's wife has obligations in the church. You can't do both full-time." "But I love my job," Hannah protested, "and we need the income." Marcus laughed coldly. "We don't need your income. The church pays me more than enough. What we need is a wife who sets her priorities straight." Hannah felt as if she had been slapped in the face. She remained silent for the rest of the evening. Marcus acted as if nothing had happened, talked about his day, laughed at an anecdote from the church. The sudden change in mood confused Hannah. Was she being too sensitive? Had she overreacted? 2 months after the wedding, Hannah wanted to visit her parents in Rüsselsheim. She hadn't seen them since the wedding. When she told Marcus, his face hardened. This weekend? Impossible. We have an important church event. You have to be by my side. But I already promised them, Hannah said. Mom cooked especially for us. Then you'll have to cancel, Marcus replied coolly. Hannah, you're no longer just Hannah Weber. You're Hannah Steinbach, wife of the senior pastor. The church comes first. Always. Can't I visit them next week? Hannah tried to negotiate. Marcus exploded. Don't you understand? This is not a negotiation. I am the head of this family, as the Bible prescribes. Your job is to support me, not to constantly put your own desires first. Your parents will understand. And if they don't, that's their problem. Hannah called her mother with tears in her eyes and cancelled the visit. Her mother was silent for a long time on the other end of the line. Is everything okay, Hannah? She finally asked. Yes, Mom. Everything's fine. We just have a lot on our plate with the church. But the lie tasted bitter in her mouth. The financial arrangements soon became the next point of conflict. Hannah had kept her own account, but Marcus insisted that they open a joint account. For household expenses, he explained. It makes sense for us to combine our finances. Hannah agreed. What she didn't know was that the documents she had signed gave Marcus complete control over this joint account. When Hannah tried to access her own savings after 2 months to buy her friend Petra a birthday present, she discovered that her account was empty. All the money had been transferred to the joint account. Confused, she confronted Marcus. He smiled reassuringly. That was part of our financial agreement, honey. Remember the papers you signed? We agreed to combine our finances completely. It's more efficient that way. You don't have to worry about money. I'll take care of everything. But those were my savings, Hannah said uncertainly. 5,000 euros that I saved over years. And now they belong to both of us, Marcus corrected her. Hannah, we're married. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is ours. That's how Christian marriage works. Hannah felt uncomfortable, but she couldn't say exactly why. Marcus sounded so reasonable, and he was the pastor, the expert on marriage and family. Maybe her discomfort was just inexperience. In the church, Hannah began to notice that the atmosphere had changed. Women who had previously been friendly now treated her with distance. Petra, her former best friend in the church, seemed nervous in her presence. When Hannah asked her about it, Petra evaded the question. It's nothing, Hannah. We all have to get used to your new role. But it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like rejection. Marcus explained it this way. They're jealous. You're now the first lady of the church. People have a hard time with changes in the hierarchy. Don't let it bother you. 3 months after the wedding, Hannah discovered something disturbing. She was looking in Marcus's study for a book he had recommended to her when she came across a folder labeled Marriage Contract. Curious, she opened it. What she read made her blood run cold. The documents she had signed so thoughtlessly were much more comprehensive than she had realized. They gave Marcus control not only over their joint finances, but also over her professional activities, her decisions about where to live, and even who she was allowed to meet. One clause stated that Hannah was not allowed to take on any professional commitments outside the church without Marcus's written consent. Another stipulated that in the event of a divorce, Hannah would have no claim to joint assets and would have to leave the house immediately. Most shocking was a clause stating that Hannah agreed to recognize Marcus as the spiritual head of the family and to follow his decisions in all important areas of life. Hannah sat with the papers in her hands, unable to comprehend what she had read. She had signed a legal agreement that made her subordinate to her husband. When Marcus came home, She confronted him, the papers in her trembling hands. "What is this?" she asked. "You never told me these documents contained such things." Marcus's face hardened. "You've been snooping around in my study. I was looking for a book." "Answer my question, Marcus. What do these clauses mean?" "They mean exactly what they say," he replied coldly. "Hannah, I told you to sign the documents. You did. You can't pretend to be surprised now." But you never explained what was in them." "Did I force you to sign? Did anyone hold a gun to your head?" Marcus's voice grew louder. "You're a grown woman. It was your responsibility to read the documents before you signed. The fact that you didn't is not my problem." Hannah began to cry. "That's not fair. You took advantage of my trust." Marcus stepped closer, his presence suddenly threatening. "I took advantage of your trust. I rescued you from your miserable life. You were a lonely, debt-ridden teacher with no prospects. I gave you a home, financial security, a place in a community. And this is how you thank me? With accusations and mistrust?" Hannah recoiled, frightened by the intensity of his anger. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to be ungrateful." Marcus's face relaxed immediately. He pulled her into his arms. "I know, darling. You're just confused. Adjusting to married life is difficult, but you have to trust me. Everything I do is for our mutual good. Do you understand that?" Hannah nodded against his chest, but deep inside her, a cold feeling of fear began to spread. She was trapped, legally, financially, and emotionally. And the man she had married was not who he appeared to be. Winter came early to Mainz. Hannah stood at the kitchen window watching snow fall on the empty garden. She had hardly seen anyone outside the community for weeks. Marcus had checked her cell phone and become angry when he found messages from her mother. "Why are you talking to her about our marriage?" he had asked, his tone dangerously calm. "What happens in this house stays in this house. It's between you, me, and God." Hannah had only mentioned that she sometimes felt lonely, but Marcus interpreted it as betrayal. He confiscated her phone for a week, as punishment, as he called it. "So you learn to respect boundaries." At school, Hannah's colleagues began to notice changes. She seemed tired, distracted, thin. The lively teacher they had known had disappeared. In her place was a shy woman who avoided eye contact. "Miss Steinbach, is everything okay?" her principal asked one day. "You've missed 3 parent-teacher conferences this week." Hannah mumbled an apology. Marcus had decided that parent-teacher conferences in the evening interfered with their time together. He had forbidden her to stay at school past 5 p.m. The church was no better. Marcus controlled her every interaction. He always stood close to her during services, watching who she talked to. Once, she had talked at length with a male member of the congregation, an older gentleman who was seeking advice on a children's church project. Later at home, Marcus yelled at her. "How dare you flirt with other men?" "In my own church, I wasn't flirting," Hannah protested. "Mr. Müller is 70 years old. I saw how you looked at him." Marcus' face was red with anger. "You embarrass me. You embarrass God. Maybe you shouldn't come to church at all if you can't behave yourself." The threat was clear. The church was the only thing Hannah had left. The isolation became unbearable. She wasn't allowed to visit her parents. Her friends had stopped calling after Marcus told them Hannah needed space to focus on her marriage. Petra once tried to take Hannah aside. "Anna, I'm worried about you," she whispered after a church service. "You seem so different. Are you really okay?" Before Hannah could answer, Marcus appeared. "Petra, my wife and I have to go. Important appointments." He took Hannah's arm firmly, almost painfully. Later in the car, he said, "You're not talking to Petra anymore. She's a bad influence." Hannah began to understand that she was living in a prison, a beautiful, comfortable prison, but a prison nonetheless. The walls were invisible but absolute. Her every move was monitored, every relationship controlled, every decision approved or rejected by Marcus. One night, while Marcus was asleep, Hannah sneaked into the kitchen and opened her laptop. She began searching for information about psychological abuse. What she found perfectly described her situation: isolation, control, gaslighting, financial dependence. She was trapped in an abusive marriage, and the man the congregation revered as God's servant was her prison guard. Hannah closed the laptop with trembling hands. Tears ran down her cheeks. She had to find a way to escape. But how? She had no money, no support, no legal basis. The contract she had signed bound her to this man. Marcus stirred in the bedroom. "Hannah," he called, "where are you?" "Here," she replied quickly, wiping away her tears. "I'm just getting some water. Come back to bed." His voice was a command, not a request. Hannah obeyed. She lay down next to the man who held her captive and stared into the darkness. Somewhere in that night, she vowed that this would not be her life. Not forever. She would find a way. She had to. Spring brought no relief. Hannah had lost 12 kilos. Her skin was pale, dark circles framed her eyes. At school, people were seriously concerned. The principal called her into her office. "Ms. Steenbach, I have to be honest. Your performance is suffering greatly. Parents are complaining. You seem distracted in class. What's going on?" Hannah opened her mouth, wanted to speak, wanted to cry out for help. But then she remembered Marcus's warning. What happens in this house is nobody's business. She shook her head. "Just stress. It'll get better." The principal sighed. "I'll give you 2 weeks. If nothing changes, we'll have to talk about your future here." That evening, Hannah came home to find Marcus in an unusually good mood. He had bought flowers, set the table, lit candles. "I've been thinking," he said with a smile. "I may have been too hard on you. Let's start over." Hannah was suspicious, but desperate for affection. Dinner was pleasant. Marcus was charming, telling jokes, asking about her day. It felt like it used to, like before the wedding. Hannah allowed herself to hope. After dinner, Marcus led her into the living room. "Hannah, I have a surprise. I think it's time we started a family." Hannah's heart sank. A baby, now, in this situation. Marcus interpreted her silence as consent. Imagine a little boy following in our footsteps, a future pastor. We would be continuing God's work. "But I'm not ready," Hannah began cautiously. "My job, our situation." Marcus's smile disappeared. "Our situation? What do you mean?" "I just mean that maybe we should wait until..." "Until what? Until you decide you're ready?" Marcus stood up, his voice hardening. "Hannah, a woman is completed through motherhood. That's what the Bible says. Your career is unimportant. Your true calling is to be a mother, to bear my children." The way he said it made Hannah shudder. My children, as if she were just a vessel, a tool. "What if I say I'm not ready yet?" Hannah asked quietly. Marcus stepped closer. "Then I would say that you are forgetting your duties as a wife. Procreation is a fundamental part of marriage. You took vows." Hannah backed away. "Marcus, please, can we talk about this?" "We're not talking. I'm informing you." His tone was final. "You're stopping the pill immediately. We're starting a family. This is not up for discussion." That night, while Marcus slept, Hannah made a decision. She couldn't stay any longer. A baby would bind her to this man forever. She had to escape before it was too late. The next day, while Marcus was at church, Hannah secretly called her mother. "Mom," she whispered into the phone, crying, "I need help. You were right. Everything is wrong here." Her mother listened as Hannah told her everything: the control, the isolation, the contracts, Marcus's true colors. When she was finished, her mother said, "Come home, Hannah. Right away. We'll find a way. But I don't have any money. No papers. He controls everything. That doesn't matter. Pack what you can carry. I'll send you a train ticket on my cell phone. You just have to get to the station." Hannah spent the afternoon secretly packing a small bag. Clothes, important documents she could find, photos. Her heart was pounding. What if Marcus came home early? What if he caught her? At 4 o'clock, she left the house for the first time in months without Marcus's permission. She walked quickly to the train station, expecting to feel his hand on her shoulder at any second. The train to Rüsselsheim was leaving in 20 minutes. Hannah sat on a bench, trembling, clutching the bag tightly. Her phone rang. Marcus. She ignored it. It rang again. And again, then a text message. "Where are you? Reply immediately." Another. "Hannah, you're making a big mistake. Come home." And then, "If you take this train, our marriage is over. You will lose everything." Hannah stared at the message. Part of her wanted to go back, apologize, try to make it work. But a stronger part, the part that had survived, the part that refused to give up, stood up as the train pulled in. She got on. As the train left the station, she saw Marcus standing on the platform, his face a mask of rage. Their eyes met for a moment through the window. Then he was gone. Hannah leaned her head against the cold glass and cried. She had done it. She was free. But the struggle had only just begun. Hannah's parents welcomed her with open arms. Her mother cried when she saw her emaciated daughter. Her father, normally a quiet man, clenched his fists. "What did he do to you?" For the first few days, Hannah hid in her old childhood bedroom. She jumped at every noise, expecting Marcus to be at the door. Her phone exploded with messages. At first they were pleading, "Please come back, I love you, we can work this out." Then they became angry. "You are destroying God's work. The congregation is suffering because of your selfishness." Finally, they became threatening. "You have signed contracts. Legal consequences will follow." Hannah's father took her to a lawyer. The woman in her mid-50s read the marriage contracts with growing horror. These documents are highly problematic. Some clauses could be void in court, but a legal battle would be expensive and protracted. "How expensive?" Hannah's father asked. The lawyer named a sum that was impossible for the Weber family to pay. "Besides," she added, "Pastor Steinbach will have all the resources. The congregation will support him. This will not be an easy fight." Hannah slumped down. Even in her escape, Marcus still controlled her. The situation escalated when Marcus spoke to the congregation. In an emotional service, he told his version of events. Hannah had suffered a mental breakdown, influenced by her unbelieving family. He asked for prayers for her healing. The congregation believed him. Petra sent Hannah a message. "I don't know what really happened, but Marcus says you need help. Please come back. We love you." Hannah tried to respond, to explain the truth, but Marcus had already portrayed her as mentally ill. Who would believe her against a respected pastor? Then came the letter from the lawyer. Marcus demanded repayment of all the money he had invested in their marriage, wedding, honeymoon, living expenses, a total of 50,000 euros. He also threatened to sue her for defamation if she told anyone about the marriage. Hannah's mother found her crying on the floor of her room. "He still wins," Hannah sobbed. "Even here he has power over me." Her mother held her tight. "No, he only has the power you give him. We'll find a way, Hannah. People like him fall eventually." But Hannah didn't believe her. Marcus seemed untouchable, until an unexpected message changed everything. A woman named Sabine wrote to her via an old social media profile. "I was Marcus's first wife. I heard what happened. We need to talk. You're not the first. And if we don't do something, you won't be the last." Hannah stared at the message. Not the first. That meant there were others. Other women who had seen Marcus's true colors. For the first time in weeks, Hannah felt a spark of hope. Maybe she wasn't alone in this fight after all. Maybe there was a way to bring the truth to light. She wrote back, "When can we meet?" Sabine was in her late 40s, elegant, but with a hardness in her eyes that only trauma can create. They met in a cafe in Frankfurt, far enough away from Mainz. Sabine placed a thick folder on the table. "I was married to him for 20 years, she began. "The same patterns, isolation, control, psychological terror. When I left, he completely destroyed my reputation. I lost everything." Hannah leafed through the documents, emails, medical reports, witness statements, evidence of years of abuse. "There's another one," Sabine continued. "Lena. She was between me and you, only married for 2 years. She left before it got worse. She hesitated. And there are rumors about others, women in the community he got too close to. Nothing provable, but a pattern." Hannah felt anger rising within her. How many lives had this man destroyed? Together, they developed a plan. They would document their stories and pass them on to a journalist who specialized in religious abuse. The publication would destroy Marcus's facade. The next few weeks were intense. Lena joined them. 3 women, 3 stories, 1 perpetrator. The journalist, impressed by the weight of evidence, began her research. She found further inconsistencies, financial irregularities in the congregation, complaints from former members, a pattern of psychological manipulation. The article appeared on a Thursday morning in a major national newspaper. "Behind the Pulpit: How a Pastor Destroyed 3 Marriages and Deceived a Congregation." The reaction was explosive. The congregation split. Some continued to stand by Marcus, others were shocked. Petra contacted Hannah. "I had no idea. I'm so sorry I didn't believe you." The Church Supervisory Authority launched an investigation. Marcus tried to portray the allegations as an act of revenge, but the evidence was overwhelming. Other women came forward, reporting inappropriate behavior, boundary violations, and abuse of power. 3 months later, Marcus resigned from his position. The congregation disbanded, divided by controversy. He lost his house, his reputation, his platform. Hannah received a letter from the lawyer. The financial claims were dropped. The marriage contracts were declared invalid. She was free, legally and emotionally. A year later, Hannah opened a counseling center for women who had experienced religious abuse. She returned to work as a teacher, this time with new strength and perspective. Sabine and Lena became close friends, 3 survivors who had found their voices. Marcus disappeared from public view. The latest report said he was trying to start a new church in another city. But this time, people were warned. His name no longer inspired admiration, but caution. Hannah stood at the window of her new apartment in Wiesbaden and looked out over the city. She had survived. More than that, she had triumphed. Not through revenge, but through truth. Her phone buzzed. A message from a woman who had read her article. "Your story gave me the courage to report my own abusive pastor. Thank you for speaking out." Hannah smiled. It had been worth it. Every tear, every struggle, every fear. She hadn't just saved herself. She had shown others the way. The truth had prevailed, and Hannah Weber was finally free.